Tiffany Compton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for coming all the way out here.
Thanks for having us. I feel like this has been the podcast that I've been fighting to make happen for like a minute now. For the listeners, a few things to catch people up. Number one, be excited because this is not another jiu-jitsu episode, so you're welcome.
No, I've never done jiu-jitsu.
We will not talk about jiu-jitsu, believe it or not. For another thing, we are like doing a patio show. We've got the cigars going. We've got the bourbons going. I'm feeling really good about that, and it's much needed today. We tried to put this together yesterday, and it's like we were supposed to do like 4 o'clock, and it's maybe 2, and I start telling Andrea, like, I don't feel very good. By 3, I'm just like on the floor holding my head, like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Give me some caffeine. Give me something. We'll just go do it. And then, I called you, and I'm like, I'm dying. Like, I need to push this back. And then even today we're coming out here and we're scrambling, like forgetting gears. We're leaving out the door. So like, I need this to like sit here and have a cigar with you. I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing better, nothing more relaxing. I mean, it's just, there's a reason our grandfathers did it.
Yeah. You provided a perfect environment for it today. Well, thank you for that. And I really think people are going to enjoy this episode, and so I'm glad we were able to push through all of my silliness and make it happen.
That's all good.
So could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? I found you on Instagram, weirdly not through hunting. You had a nice photo of like a cigar and bourbon as I was looking in the area, and I was like, all right, this is going to be another bearded dude with cigars and bourbon. And then I was like, wait, this is a female. Okay, that's interesting. And then she hunts, and this is a big thing, and hunting birds. And so tell us, what's your shtick? What are you all about?
Yeah, so I always say that I'm kind of a nobody. Let's be perfectly honest. It was kind of surprising. I mean, a complete stranger was like, hey, I found your post. And I'm like, nobody finds my post. No, but really, those are my big things. I got into upland bird hunting about 8, almost 9 years ago now. Totally committed myself into that. Cool. Grew up hunting whitetail like everyone in Indiana did. Just kind of branched out from there. I waterfowl hunt with the dogs. I went to Africa this past June. And I actually found bourbon and cigars as a byproduct of my hunting. So Really? It all comes together.
How did that connect?
So I was on a duck hunting trip, and we're in the blind, and it's me and a bunch of my guy friends, and they start passing around a box of cigars, which little did I know at the time, those were Opus X Lost Cities. Very, very strong cigars, also very expensive. And my buddy is just handing these out. Well, I'm like, I'm the only chick. I'm not going to be the only one who doesn't have one.
Yes.
But I've never even had a cigar or a cigarette. I've never had anything in my life. Okay. But I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. Light it up, smoke it, everything's fine. I'm like, whew, man, feeling that a little bit. We continued to drink a little bit of bourbon. We had a couple bottles of wine and a second cigar after dinner. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, gentlemen, I need to go excuse myself for a moment and commence to be as sick as I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And you would think that I would hate cigars forever after that.
Yeah.
But no, I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn about it. And now that cigar, the Lost City, is absolutely the pinnacle of cigars for me. It's my favorite. I've got one I'm holding back for my birthday. But I just, again, like everything else, kind of dove in head first. And here I am.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild origin story, because I think, the first experience with nicotine, in my opinion, should be a good one if you are going to enjoy it, because there's a good chance if it's a bad one, you're pretty much done forever with that poison.
Yeah. And that was a bad one.
Yeah. I had good first experiences with nicotine. My friends in college used to hookah, and I found that to be really fun. And so that was good. But then, of course, I've had those times. Like, people don't understand, like, how rough nicotine poisoning feels when you are there.
Yeah.
It's the sickest you'll ever feel. It's like seasick on top of the flu. You're just, like, shaking, trying not to die. That's a pretty rough one. I commend you for, sticking with it. Way to go.
I still occasionally I'll find some sticks that'll make me feel a little buzzy or a little nauseous, but it's not very often. I actually was at a cigar lounge downtown recently, and a gentleman was very polite, and we were discussing some different sticks, and he gave me some. And I brought them home and did some research on it, and it literally says, like, this will kick your butt. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to ever smoke those.
Yeah, I had to make rules for myself pretty early on. Like, I'm going to eat a full meal before I have one of these bad boys. It's a really bad idea to switch the order of that. And, limit my intake. But I used to really enjoy doing it back when we lived in Denver. And now that we're like on the road in an RV, I don't have a porch exactly. And I could get away with smoking a cigar every now and then in my campground. But if I do it all the time, people are going to be pretty frustrated by that. And rightly so. Like, people don't always want to be vibing with cigars all the time.
And we have a lot of friends that aren't really into it. And so, I kind of, like you said, pick and choose your audience around what you're doing. Yeah.
It's probably just a good rule of thumb for anything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
You need to fix your burn, by the way. It's driving me insane.
Why? Oh, I'm getting really uneven.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, this is where I shouldn't be doing 2 jobs at once, honestly. You need to pause this?
No, I just need to adjust the smoke so we can see Tiffany's.
Because I'm short. It's all right.
Thank you.
We're really lucky here.
Do you approve now?
Yeah, in central Indiana, we have some really great cigar culture, which is kind of surprising. So here local, we've got Maduro on Main that's in Fortville. We've got Burn by Rocky Patel that's downtown. There's Havana on the north side. We've got Blend, on the north side. And so it's really surprisingly a good city to be into cigars in.
Yeah. I think it's a great city for a lot of things. We've been really enjoying our time here. This is the first episode I've done from Indianapolis, but we are here in the great state of Indiana on Eastern Time, and we've been having a lot of fun in town here. We're staying kind of just east of the city, and I've been training at 10th Planet Indianapolis. For those of you who know the area at all, Andrew's been doing jiu-jitsu, but the thing that I have not been doing here is any sort of hunting at all. I mean, or obviously not, because it's not necessarily in season for me right now, but it hasn't been on my mind. And so I'm excited to change that today and think hunting thoughts.
Yeah.
So we were just down in Texas a couple months ago on a hog hunt that did not turn out, where we just couldn't get him to come onto the property that we needed him to. We actually ended up shooting a raccoon instead, which was an interesting experience. And now I have a really cool coonskin cap.
There you go.
So I feel like a Boy Scout or Daniel Boone, depending on how you feel about that. Not Daniel Boone, David Crockett? Both, maybe? One of those two.
One of those two.
Okay.
Either works.
Either works, yeah, sure. Or just a redneck. And so that was kind of fun. But one thing that we have not yet done is any sort of turkey hunting. But I know you just did.
Yeah, so we are smack dab in our very late Indiana season. That's kind of a thorn in my side, how late our season is, but
Really?
It's out of my control, so I go with it. But yes, I was very, very lucky to go down into Greene County, where Crane Naval Base is, and on day 2, I was able to get a really great bird, and it was a really unorthodox type of hunt. I've killed a couple birds on that property before, but this one was definitely the most challenging and the most rewarding, because he was definitely the oldest bird I've ever taken there.
So what happened? Give us the details, because I know you had quite a story.
Yeah, so day 1, you're all amped up. Day 1 is the easiest day to wake up at 3 a.m.,
Yep.
drive down there, you're all jazzed up. No gobbles at dawn. You couldn't shock, gobble, crow, nothing. It just wasn't happening. They weren't coming, call into the box call. And that's kind of disheartening. Walk around this giant property and it's just silence. And as I'm literally, because I had some meetings I had to make, so I'm coming up around this field thinking, well, I'll just get back to my truck. I'll look up, and there is a strutter and 3 hens in this field that I've basically circled. And I started out my morning in. And you think to yourself, where were those birds all day?
Yeah.
And there was no way to make an approach without getting busted. So it's one of those, you just got to, okay, it's a little bit of intel. Let's come back tomorrow.
Right.
So get up the second day at 3 a.m. It's a little less easy. Drive all the way down there. And right at dawn, he shock gobbled to a dog that was barking on a neighboring property. I was like, all right, so he's still here, but knowing, I guess, to the benefit of seeing them the day before, knowing that he's with those hens, you know that's going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Set up on the edge of that field, and they would come in and out of that fence line about 150 yards out, but those hens would not commit to coming into that field. So he's not coming.
Mm.
And you just watch him for an hour, full strut. I mean, it's a beautiful scene. Looking back, I'm really glad I got to sit and enjoy it and have that memory of that bird. But when you're sitting there and you just want that bird to close the distance, there is nothing more frustrating.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's really nice. And in the moment, you're like, I'm so over this.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so after watching that bird for about an hour, and one of the hens, I think, was ready to lay. So she kept anchoring them into that ridge. I had a decision to make. They finally went out of the field, and it's like, okay, either I bust across this field and get seen, it's quicker, but it's more dangerous, or I can do the smart thing. Drop down, lower topography, circle the field, and try to come up. Got up over there, and it was just the worst place you could have set up.
Mm.
And there was just no choice. You got to go for it. You know, if you know anything about turkeys, you know their eyesight is just amazing. And you don't normally get to sneak in on them. I got lucky and got within 45 yards of them where they were down in that valley, so below me. And it was now or never. And the shot opportunity presented itself. He came out between two trees. I took it, was able to roll him. That's a distance I wouldn't ever want to take a shot at 45 yards, but you got to do what you got to do. And whenever I saw I rolled him, and then he kind of got his wings up under him, just like a grouse, I told myself, get ahead of him. Boom, dropped him on the second shot. And I don't think that'll ever work out again.
So when you say rolled him, that means you've got a hit, but it's not over yet.
Yeah.
And so you have to run up and get that done.
Yeah, so normally if you'll hit a bird, you know, between that 20 and 30, that sweet spot in yardage, you know, I hate saying this, but there's that like hashtag can't stop the flop. I hate that. But they will flop. And he turned and spun, but I could tell he wasn't down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew you better keep your eye on him because he's either going to run or he's going to fly. And luckily for me, he did turn the way he did because that presented a shot. But yeah, the funny thing about those hens, after I get down to him, have my moment of like reveling and just respecting that bird and taking it. They're beautiful birds. And I walk out into the field and they're right out in the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For anybody who listens to this podcast and does not hunt, turns out animals don't exactly do what you would like them to when you're hunting, and that becomes the challenge of it. It is funny, when I was first learning about hunting, a lot of the theory makes sense and then really fades away when you're out there trying to get it done.
Yep.
So our experience so far has been in we went and did a bow hunt with whitetails, which was unfortunately unsuccessful. We've done some squirrel hunting now. We've done some raccoon hunting. We went duck hunting, which is probably the closest to what you generally get up to. It turns out I'm terrible with a shotgun, just so bad. But I was with some guys down in Florida who were really, really good at it. And we had a pretty good experience with that. And I have yet to find the experience that I dislike. It's all really enjoyable to do, and the pursuit is really nice. And coming from a family that does not hunt, coming into it as an outsider has always been really interesting. But also, I often wish I was more experienced than I am, you know, because I don't have any years of experience behind me.
But we all started somewhere,
Mhm.
and that's the thing to remember. You know, to circle back to talking about how you can play it out in your mind, you can read how it should all play out.
Yeah.
A great friend of mine who's an avid turkey hunter, and he told me ahead of season, we were just having a discussion, he goes, Tiffany, even the turkey does not understand why the turkey does what the turkey does. And he has shot a lot of turkeys. I think he's on state 10 now for this season, so I envy him. But no, I mean, we all started somewhere. To be perfectly honest, growing up with my father, the only species we hunted was whitetail. And then occasionally we'd go out maybe once a season and chase some rabbits, mostly because he used me as his bird dog. you know, go get in that brush, Tiffany,
That's
and
funny.
get those rabbits out. But we all started somewhere. And for me, turkey hunting was something I tried to do on my own for 6 seasons unsuccessfully before finally I was able to break that curse. And I've gone the last 2 seasons without getting a bird. So, I actually did my first archery hunt for whitetail this past season.
Oh, okay. How'd you enjoy it?
I have mixed emotions about archery. And I think some of that is some of the demographic around here. So, and I'll admit, some archers are a little elitist, right? And much like a lot of bird dog people tend to be very elitist as well. I'm gonna get so much hate mail for saying that.
This is the funny part. I don't know a lot of the politics of the hunting world yet, so
Lucky
we
you.
can walk right into whatever traps
Okay.
that I don't even know. But you did mention when I first reached out, you were like, people don't agree with me a lot, and I was like, okay, well, that's worth talking about. You know,
Yeah, I own it. I have some unpopular opinions. So I don't really have anything wrong with the tools of archery. There are trad people who say that you shouldn't be shooting crossbows. There are crossbow people who say we absolutely have a right. I'll be honest, mine was a crossbow because I have not shot a compounder trad bow.
Mhm.
But we get a lot of people who will take crappy shots, who don't prep enough, who go out in the field, wound a deer. Well, I just didn't track it down, and I'll go out tomorrow and I'll shoot another one. That's pretty prevalent here in Indiana if you watch a lot of the social media groups around here. And that's kind of where it just breaks my heart, and that's what I struggle with archery. With my rifle, I know that as long as my shot placement is perfect, and you even get a little bit of grace with the improper shot placement, but you know that deer is going to go down for the most part.
Yeah.
Archery, for me, was such a challenge. I felt such an obligation to be as good as I could be, and I knew that if I picked up a compound bow at the nearest shop and tried it, I wouldn't be as ethical with my shot. So I picked up a crossbow and was able to take a very, very nice, almost a 4.5, probably a 5, closer to 5-year-old deer if the taxidermist is correct. And it was a really great experience.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. There all the branches of things I enjoy doing, whether that's, I think jiu-jitsu is another comparison here, or hunting. There seems to be a lot of infighting all the time that I don't always understand, because I think we're on the same team. People are always going to take. Not everybody agrees about why an interest is so great, I think, is the issue. Some people do jiu-jitsu because they think it's best to be the best competitor. Some people hunt because they really are going for trophies. And some people hunt because they want a return to caveman style connection with the world. And some people do it because they have a certain ethic about animals. But at the end of the day, most of the actions turn out to be the same. When we went on our whitetail hunt last year, my first ever up in Wisconsin, we did go bow hunting, and that was mostly so that we could do like just a longer season, because I didn't want to be out there. I mean, Wisconsin on opening day, from what I understand, just sounds like a war zone.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get the experience of like, oh, this is hunting, this is great from that. Besides which, for someone who's coming into hunting, I had shot a bow for like a year before that time. I had shot on just a recurve. I got a compound in preparation for this hunt and had been training on that. But when you are embracing hunting with guns, for someone who doesn't have a background in either, you have to first accept guns and figure that whole world out. Then you have to accept hunting and figure that whole world out, or vice versa. And that's 2 different worlds that is so intense, where for me it was like, I get archery.
Yeah.
Now I have to get the hunting side of things, and I can go take my time with it. But unfortunately, we had the experience that you're describing, which was I don't believe due to a lack of preparation because I worked my ass off. But we still had a deer that we couldn't recover. I didn't go out the next day for another buck because I didn't feel good about that.
Now, I'll commend you for that. So that was something that I've said for years, and it's really a shame that we don't have enough hunters that would self-police with that. I believe, much like in Africa, if you shed blood, I think you should have to fill your tag, punch your tag, you know? That's really my biggest thing. I don't hate archery. I hate the people who go out, make poor shots, and then do it 3 or 4 more times.
Sure. Yeah.
And like you said, you did it very ethically. You did your work, and that's going to happen. You know, I've never lost an animal with a rifle, but I know that it could happen. And Africa was maybe the closest I ever came to having that happen, and I had to process those emotions. And thank goodness my PH Peter, he kept me going, because that first night going back into camp when that blue wildebeest was still running, and I knew that we're going to track it tomorrow, but I felt that I had done something wrong by maiming it. That was hard to live with, you know, but unfortunately not everybody has those ethics. I would love it if we were all on the same team. I would love if we could do away with this trend of hunting for the sake of likes and sponsorships, and just do it because we all love it, you know? And I think that the majority of people out there doing it are doing it right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the people who are doing it wrong tend to get this bigger audience.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, it depends what we patronize too. You know, if people weren't paying attention to someone because they're like, hey, you do some unethical things, they wouldn't really have much of a channel. So it'd be nice if people were a little more discerning.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a certain set of influencers right now that have some federal charges pending, and
Really?
their followers haven't balked at that at all.
Yeah. It's complicated with hunting, though. There's a weird nuance here. I wonder what your take is on it. Because if we wanted a perfect experience, as in nothing could possibly go wrong, that's just farming. That's just ranching. And we do that. We have ranched venison, you know, and there you go. So part of this has always been I guess that there's a certain amount of risk that it won't go perfectly, much as we may try. What do you think about that? Because if we just wanted perfection, we could do that. We could not have no hunting, and it's all just farmed, and there you go. And
that's very insightful. That really is. And I guess I haven't really given that as in-depth a thought, but that's very insightful on your part. I think that, yes, we all accept that there is room for error. We all hope it won't happen. And I guess that, yeah, if you want to go do a canned hunt where you're guaranteed a deer at 20 yards on a feeder, maybe there are those people that want that experience, but you're right.
Well, I think it's interesting to me because I think there's people who could want that experience, and maybe they want that experience for the same reason that you would only ever take a super ethical shot and feel really, good that you haven't lost an animal. Because I tell you what, like when we were out hog hunting, we were just doing like some surveying, but I always took that rifle out because I just know how animals are, and they will just show up when you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna go fill these bait barrels, and then you'll see 8 hogs or whatever.
Yep.
So we were sitting up in this blind, and we were near a feeder, and I haven't hunted using a feeder at all, but I was sure sitting there going, what stops me from wanting to do this? What about this is it that I don't like? And it's hard to separate that from the risk of that unpredictability in a way, because we could make it very predictable. Feeders are a level of that, but so are guns, and then so are compound bows, and then so are recurve bows, and then you're just throwing spears and
No, you're right. It is a bit. I guess it is a bit hypocritical of me to have, some of the feelings I do. You're right. I guess that's the human aspect of it, is that, Gosh, we all have an opinion, right? One of the things that I told you, are you sure you want to come talk to me about is my opinion on the R3 movement and the term adult onset hunting, and that has kind of gotten me some grief too. And I admit I am human and conflicted about that.
What is the R3 movement?
So the R3 movement of reacquiring retention and recruitment of hunters.
Oh, okay.
And many states have really dove deep and invested into that model. Indiana is a state where our current leadership is invested up to their neck in R3 and green paths. So I don't begrudge anybody who wants to come into hunting. I just want the people who come into this sport to do it ethically and for the right reasons. And I do worry about, we are recruiting supposedly successfully. I think there's some question as to how successful R3 truly is on the recruitment stage, but we are recruiting more hunters to come in and increase pressure on a daily decreasing natural resource. Look at this year, there seems to be a lot of talk about, and maybe it's just because I've been kind of in that zone, around turkey populations and people struggling to find the birds that they once found. Whitetails, there's a lot of different arguments around doe management versus buck management. You go out west, you've got the tag system, and no matter what species you're hunting, grouse, woodcock, they too have their own issues with numbers of species. So do we really want to keep recruiting new people to put pressure on these resources? I think if the states are going to invest in recruiting, they have to be willing to invest the same in adding more open land for these new hunters. You as a new hunter, if you were to come into whatever sport, whatever species you're chasing, and you are continually fighting other people for land access, whether that's public lands and they get swamped, or around here, leasing property. It's a vicious, vicious market for leasing property. So you're up against that challenge. Then you have less of the species you're chasing continually. That's hard to keep someone hooked. And then if you think about hunting, whether it's archery, whether it's rifle hunting, whether it's shotgun hunting, there's a steep entry point as far as the financial aspect.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think that R3 is a great model for angling, fishing. It's a low-cost entry point. You can go to Walmart, Bass Pro, pick up a fishing rod, some decent bait or tackle, and you can be successful. I think with hunting, it's just not the right model. And then you think about trying to recover lost hunters. Well, why did they leave? Lack of access, too much competition. How are you going to reverse that when you're adding, on the other end of the spectrum, more hunters?
Right. It's a basic economic issue of supply and demand here.
Absolutely.
Not to mention an issue of data. I don't know enough about conservation. I'd like someone to tell me that I'm wrong. But I imagine it's quite complex to actually try to estimate populations of certain species, and not just complex, but we've got it, but complex and we probably don't have it just yet. And I do see what you're saying. I think it maybe ties in to your other point of the like people hunting for the likes, for the external approval of what they're doing as opposed to doing something for themselves. And I think a good chunk of that, to me, I wonder how much of it can be attributed to hunting the popular species. I mean, yeah, we have a lot of. No one's arguing. No one, I don't think, would argue this fact, which is that there's a a better case to be made for whitetail overpopulation than, say, for elk population. Overpopulation, I mean to say. So most people agree, okay, there's a lot of whitetails out here. And I don't think a lot of people are saying the elk are really overpopulated out here. But elk has become a very popular species to want to hunt. But you could go even further than that, which is to say, Andrea and I have hunted some very odd species just out of necessity because we're there, we're hunting, we're not trying to go home empty-handed,
Right.
And had really good experiences. But when I tell people, hey, I hunted a raccoon, they usually give me a certain kind of look. And then I'm like, but you didn't taste the meat, and it was pretty good. And you didn't know that I learned how to make a hat, which might be a useful skill at some point in life. And so I don't know. Do you think there's anything to that the trophy hunting is pervading into the social media hunting for likes kind of thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so
Could be on a wrong tangent here, but it's
no.
I'm curious.
So I will say that whenever I went to Africa, the number one kind of objection that I kept hearing was, well, I'm not a trophy hunter. I wouldn't go to Africa. So I think that when we think about trophy hunting, there are two parts to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is the trophy. There are the skulls or the mounts that hang on my wall. There is also the experience of that hunt.
Right.
There is also, when you particularly think about Africa, how many people, their livelihood, their mere survival depends on quote unquote trophy hunters and the animals themselves. If you overpopulate, which is very easy to do if we weren't hunting and nothing is hunting a lot of those animals,
Mm-hmm.
They starve. They die a slow, painful death. So I don't say that trophy hunting is a negative. I think that we have to stop the stigma of trophy hunting. You can get your trophy and get your meat. My 180-inch buck, whitetail buck, is going to have more meat on it than a yearling buck with a spike.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a meat hunter and you say ethically, I don't hunt for horns, wouldn't it make more sense to hunt that 180-inch buck that we'd all love? I wish they were falling out of the sky. They're not. So in my mind, it's people going out to just do it just for the sake of filling the tag to say that they hunted that deer. They killed a spike. He's coming 2 years old. They could carry him out on their shoulders. To me, that's more unethical and worse for our sport and worse for the population of animals than taking a mature animal which has spread its genetics, which is at the end of its lifespan.
Yeah. You're saying a trophy hunter is a picky hunter. And a picky
Absolutely.
hunter is rarely a bad thing. A picky hunter takes a picky shot at a picky time with a picky animal.
Yeah. I just think we have to do away with that stigma, and I think it's hard because that is what so much of outside society, outside the hunting realm, that's what they keep keying on, right? A trophy hunter is a bad hunter. We have to do away with that stigma. We have to be better at educating. We can't keep fighting with the other side because we can't win, because we are a smaller population. We have to be educators.
But where's the education going to come from then? Because when you talk about it, how do you talk about it in a positive way without inspiring people to want to go do it? Because I think that's maybe the challenge. Like, it was because there were really good wildlife educators who talked about their experiences and everything they had learned that I wanted to start doing it. So how can you make that education widely available to the public without also sort of selling the idea of, like, this is great?
Because we don't have to push people into doing it. People don't have to be hunters to appreciate what hunting does for the conservation of a species, for the sheer science of it. And
what about, like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it just occurred to me, like, I've had a lot of people, including, I had Jeremiah Dowdy on the podcast, who's from Field of Plate.
He was amazing.
Yeah, isn't he great? He talked about how his freezers are always open to his neighbors.
Yep.
And I wonder if that is almost like where I feel like a sense of that's almost where you're going, of like the community hunter. Like maybe it should be a person who is better than kind of the rest of us at this. But again, weirdly, we're talking economics. That's economics. That is, have the person who's best at this do it, and his neighbor who's the best at, I don't know, landscaping does that guy's yard. Now we have trade, and now we have good things. I don't know. Is there something there too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. During COVID, how many people couldn't find chicken at their grocery store?
Right.
And I had tons and tons of pheasant and quail, and because we raised those birds to work the dogs year round. I distributed tons of that to people that had never had a wild species in their entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and by doing that and teaching them by secondhand knowledge, I guess, that, hey, look, this is amazing meat. This is great. There is a place for it. We're not just killing these animals and dumping them into a pond. You know, we're not leaving them to rot, which ironically would be what happened if they weren't hunted. They would all starve and die and rot on the sides of the roads. But there's that education. But there's also just, hey, I don't need you to do what I do. You don't have to do that. You don't have to get up at 3 a.m. and spend all this money and do all these things. But just don't hate me because I do.
Yeah. God, that's so true. Yeah.
I can't tell you. So I work in the corporate realm. And obviously a lot of my coworkers are not hunters. Admittedly, some of them don't know I hunt. Most of them don't know I hunt. But the ones that do, they always ask me, especially about Africa and how could you do this and how could you go over and kill a zebra? Well, let me tell you about how a zebra and its herd can destroy a habitat, and let me tell you about how I respected that animal and how that was a childhood dream of mine came true, and what that means for someone who came from an impoverished area of Indianapolis, who was the first person to graduate high school in their family, and now I'm able to make what seemed really impossible come true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let me tell you about that. And one of the biggest anti-hunters at my company, she sat across from me at dinner, and by the end of the dinner, she's like, all right, you've totally changed my mind on how I felt about you as a hunter.
Yeah.
That's what we have to be doing. We can't fight with them. That gets us nowhere. That applies to so many things in today's society, right? If we
Yeah.
could just sit over a bourbon, sit over a cigar,
Yeah.
have differing views, but respect each other and understand the facts versus emotion, I think we could come so far in this movement.
Yeah. It's an interesting tie-in, in fact. I liked what you said about sometimes the turkey doesn't even know what the turkey's doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that separates us from animals as we know it is this ability to do what we're doing, which is to use reason and to conceptualize. And I think people give that away for tribal emotions and approval of other people, and have a hard time being willing to stand on their own thoughts. And the funny thing for me is, like, doing this podcast, this is going to be episode, I don't know, I'm nearing 80, something like that, right? I think. She doesn't care. She's not paying attention. She's getting all that work done. I always look at her as if she's like my podcast producer. And that's sort of
like,
the joke.
Listen, I've done my part. I've set up the camera. We're done.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I think I just want to feel more important. Can you try to make me feel more important? Just nod when I look at you. Like, that was astute. Yeah, thank you.
Very insightful.
This was going to be a long thought, and I just wrecked it by taking this tangent. That's what bourbons and cigars do, though. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Let me piece together all the logic I'm going for once again. So, reason, that's really important. I have done 80 episodes of this show, and I don't even think that I could sit down with episode 1 Tyler and agree on like quite a few things, and that's me. I don't know, 2 years ago maybe, and that's pretty wild. So the fact of the matter is, people are very worried to put their own original, actual reasoning on the line, even if they change it later.
A perfect example is me archery hunting this year.
Yeah.
You know, I had to own that for years I've been adamant that rifle hunting is more ethical than archery hunting. And here I am, you know, like you mentioned, wanting to expand your season.
Yeah.
Around here, there's a truck on every field on opening day of rifle
Yeah.
season. So, and I'm using the wrong description for that. We technically have a firearm season, not a rifle season, because you can use shotguns still. But for me, it was, if I'm ever going to shoot a trophy whitetail that I feel fit to hang on my wall, I'm going to have to archery hunt, because by firearm season, they're all pressured. I had to put my own pride aside, and I'm a very prideful person. I am stubborn. I am prideful. I am vain. I own all of it.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
We've been to all that, like the ego has been a topic on this podcast for the last several episodes, so you go for it.
Yeah, and I had to own that, and I had friends who gave me crap about it, and it worked. It worked out. Guess what? I shot the biggest buck of my life, and I had to do it with an arrow.
Yeah.
You know, you have to own that. So, yeah, that's just part of that human evolution.
Yeah. I like archery a lot. I mean, I've always liked it. It's really, I think as a kid, I just wanted to be Robin Hood so bad because he's the best. And then as an adult, just shooting, I have fun when I go to the range and shoot guns, but not as much fun as when I'm shooting the bow, because it's like quiet and my, you know, I don't know, ADHD brain doesn't start like firing, like get all jittery, like there's guns going off everywhere. This is crazy. I really enjoy shooting the bow a lot. And there's something that's quiet and intimate about those moments when you're up in the stand with a bow and you know you have to move. Like that's the crazy thing. Now that I've done both, the fact that with the bow you see your target and then you're like, I still have to do a crazy amount of moving with my arms.
Yeah.
As opposed to the rifle where you're probably just gonna, you know, drop your head down on the.
I've been busted. I've been busted with my rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
you know,
good.
a deer comes in behind you at a really tight range. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. But the other thing I love about rifles, among the many things in terms of accuracy, is certainly not having to be like, is that 38 yards or
Yes.
42 yards?
Yes.
Which is for anybody who, you know, wants to step outside and look at a tree and doesn't practice this very often. You have to know the difference between 38 yards and 43 yards.
Yeah.
Like that matters. And that's crazy. So I don't know. I see both, but I feel like what you're driving me to is asking like, why did I start doing this exactly? Because you make a good argument why someone like me should not have gotten into it. You do. It's a compelling argument. I should let somebody who's better at it and who has more experience at it. So why should I do it? Or do you think I should not? It's a good question,
Man,
right?
we're getting deep, and
I
we're
don't know if I
only
have
on
an
our
answer
first
for you.
drinks.
Well, I'm on my second. I should catch up. But I mean, I'm not really looking for you to answer that question because I'm going to do me. But, you know, I'm actually out here, I think, doing good work with my hunting, doing good things and going on good hunts and enjoying myself and learning a lot about myself. But your argument is compelling that maybe I shouldn't.
And that's the thing. I would never want to push someone who is doing it right out of the game, right? Because we need people like you. We need people who are doing it for the right reasons, for the people who aren't just looking for that trophy picture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll be honest. Whenever I heard that you skinned and ate a raccoon, I was like, man, I got to give him props. Because,
That's pretty wild.
I mean, especially growing up around here, I mean, I've got a problem with raccoons around here being the size of small dogs.
Yeah.
And with the fur trade not being worthwhile, a lot of people aren't hunting them. You know, they eat a lot of ground nesting bird species eggs.
Including turkey.
And I really had to think about that when I was like, you know what? I've killed a lot of raccoons. I won't lie, I've never even skinned one.
Mm.
And so here I am being like, I'm better than some of the people I see on Instagram that are just doing it for the likes. But I'm like, well, that's a species that I've probably abused that privilege, right?
Yeah.
I had to reflect on myself whenever I heard you speak about that.
That is interesting, but I think it is different because you've probably been going after raccoons as a form of pest control generally, where we were out on like full blown farmland, hardcore nothing for 20 minutes style farmland. And that's one thing I had to tell people is like this isn't your neighborhood trash panda. Like this guy is just eating eggs, like
Yeah.
that's what he eats, and bugs and stuff. So that's what we were going after there. But that is interesting. And it's what I love about hunting. I've met people who are willing to have interesting, nuanced conversations about it, and I learn a lot. I've been saying lately that it's almost like I'm not a mystical person, so I don't have a better way of describing this exactly. But it's weird how all my experiences in hunting are like leading me through like a Boy Scout instead of how I've been trying to do it. So I was going after a beautiful whitetail buck with a bow, which is like that's some higher level stuff, really. And I didn't get that. Instead, what I got that hunting trip was a squirrel. But okay, I learned how to skin and gut and all those things. And then we moved on to a duck, and I didn't even get to shoot it because I'm a terrible shot with a shotgun, so fine.
I guarantee you just weren't giving it as much lead as it needs.
You're probably right. But I got to learn how to pluck and gut and breast and all those things with waterfowl, okay. And then we're going for hogs, which I thought, there you go, that's pretty simple. And we walked away with a raccoon, which would just be, a fur bear or varmint or whatever you want. But I'm being slowly walked through. So, like, maybe one day these animals will let me have, like, a nice big animal that I can get lots of meat from and not feel weirdly embarrassed to talk about.
The crazy thing about Mother Nature and hunting is she doesn't give a damn how much preparation you've done, how much money you've spent, how much you care.
Yeah.
That is where she is the great equalizer. These animals are the great equalizer. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've had hunts where I'm a week into season and I'm like, gosh, like I deserve that. Like I'll have those moments where I'm like, I deserve to see a good deer. I've put in my work, and
Right.
other people just show up and they sit down and a
Yeah.
160 walks in front of them and they
Yeah.
kill it the first day. I've got buddies that I'll admit I get a little envious sometimes. I'm like, they'll just go pick up a gun at the store, sight it in once, go sit in their backyard and smoke a deer bigger than anything I've ever killed. And you're like,
Yeah. What is the what goes on in your internal monologue when you're sitting there waiting for an animal? Because mine gets real weird. I'm curious what other people's are like.
I'll
Like
tell
I'm talking hours,
Yeah.
hours, and you're freezing.
yeah. So when it's deer hunting, it's just miserable. I'm always cold. I am in my worst headspace when I am deer hunting.
Mm.
When I am behind the dogs in the UP in the beauty of October and I'm walking for 8 to 10 miles, and not every day you even see a bird flush out, let alone harvest one. I'm very lucky. I have 2 great dogs. They do all the work and make me look good. My inner voice in those hunts is very positive. I come home rejuvenated.
Mm.
But if you ask me what I'm thinking whenever I'm deer hunting, I am a miserable human being.
Yeah.
So it really varies by the experience. But at the same token, I am not a religious person, but I've had some of the most amazing experiences sitting in a tree stand with the frost. It looks like crystals on everything, right? And you're watching that sun come up, and I'm like, I really feel bad for people who never experience that. That is something that is kind of reoccurring. And
So recruit them. Bring them in, right?
no,
Hang on.
no. There's so much pressure here in Indiana. It's insane. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. So
Mhm.
around here, I mean, you see there's a lot of fields. This year that will be in soybeans. That will be in soybeans. That will be in corn. And it's like there will be a truck at every field.
Yeah.
Leases are extremely expensive. It's just getting harder and harder. Last turkey season, I'm sorry, 2 turkey seasons ago, I walked around this county knocking on doors for months being told no. Somebody else already hunts it.
Yeah.
I don't allow hunting. That's discouraging.
Yeah.
That'll make you not want another hunter.
Yeah. I wish Andrea was on this podcast with us because I feel like you have more of the thought. I don't know because you've been doing really good in telling these stories in the Wild Texans on the Hunt series, which people haven't seen it, and that's how you can see what we've been doing on these hunts. I know I'm the one who always says it, but you're the one who I feel understands it, why we got into this in a much better way than I do. Self-sufficiency for those who are listening. I think, yeah, you're right. We do a lot of pushing to live with an extreme amount of intention, I think, in our lives, to where we started cooking every meal for ourselves, and we started looking into what are we cooking in these meals, and then that unraveled, and then that turned into we could do better with the meat here, and then it turned into we could be getting the meat for ourselves. So it's snowballed into a massive amount of like just every decision should be intentional. Nothing should be left as like, well, this is just how we do it. And we put everything to question, I think. And hunting is one of those things.
I'm a terrible cook.
Really?
I have 2 freezers full of game meat, and I am a terrible cook. I recruit all of my friends who can cook to come over. I'm like, we can grill out at my house. I'll provide the drinks. I'll provide the meat. You just have to cook
That's
it.
so funny because those two things usually go hand in hand. Like all the hunters I've met are like extreme foodies and chefs.
I love good food.
Mm-hmm.
I love having a higher experience in my dining.
Yeah.
Beholder here in Indianapolis, you've got to go before you leave Indiana. You have to go to Beholder, have that experience. It's the best food in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
And he actually, he put quail on there last week. He does a lot of really interesting dishes with unique ingredients. But yeah, I never learned how to hunt or how to cook. I haven't gotten any better at it, and I really hate it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny because cooking is what brought us to hunting. So we are like the opposite, where I think most people hunt and then they learn how to do insanely good dishes and all that stuff. Maybe that's why people aren't eating raccoon. Maybe that's why you're not eating raccoon because you didn't.
I don't know how to
nail
cook
it
it.
like I nailed it.
And I have a bunch of wild game cookbooks, and then I'm like, that is way more in depth than I'm able to go.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing is that we did get into cooking because I don't listen to cookbooks anymore at all because I've cooked enough things that I'm like, no, they're wrong. That's wrong. We don't do that. But then it's just cooking to your own standard. Like you just know what you like, and you're like, okay, that's not nearly enough garlic, or that's way too much onion, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what Andrea has us on now is that we're mostly on that carnivore diet.
Yeah.
So like, it's primarily meat. I still can't get into organs. I really fucking hate liver. It tastes so bad. But we did switch over so that we're mostly eating meat. And I grew up as a kid not eating beef. That my family didn't eat beef. And now I'm eating like beef every day. Very different worlds.
You know what's funny is growing up, we had a lot of pork because my father came from a family of, hog farmers. So we always had pork. He loves pork. And then we only had venison. So to me, even to this day, if I eat something that's beef, I know that's beef. Whereas some people are like, oh, I tasted venison and it tasted gamey. And I'm like, I don't know that I've ever had a piece of venison, even from the oldest, ruddiest buck. For example, the buck that I killed in October 21st, he was rutted out like crazy.
Yeah.
His neck was swollen. Everything about him was like, this should be a really gamey buck. I don't taste it.
Yeah.
But if I taste beef, I'm like, yeah, that's beef. That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't I had to learn to really like beef. I had to learn to digest it first of all because it used to make me not feel very good. I literally
It's
didn't like
fatty.
eating it. Yeah. Yeah. What are you you good? Oh, Andrea is looking around. Oh, doing your job? Sorry. I had a cigar and you're like my best friend. And so I forget I'm supposed to be doing a podcast. What were we talking about? Beef. Yeah. I took some time to like beef. I don't know. And now like we'll make steaks, which I've gotten better at, but I try to cook it medium rare like I'm supposed to, and then I eat that, and I'm like, this is a very weird thing.
Oh, I
this
want my
bloody piece of
meat as rare and bloody as possible.
Really? Yeah.
And that's
okay.
the challenge with venison. I mean, if you want it to be truly rare, you're talking about seconds on each side, which is a really weird concept when you have people who are not hunters and they're like, what, I'm going to cook this for 30 seconds on each side. You're like, mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing that really got me with cooking was I think I started doing it, and then bread making became like the main thing. So I was making my own bread, and then of course you go straight from bread to sourdough. And you're like, now I'm gonna make my own sourdough, and honestly, that changed everything from there. But my whole thing was like establishing a rule of like just eat whatever I want. It's the Michael Pollan rule, I think, which is eat anything you want as long as you make it yourself.
Yeah.
And that has never led me wrong. Even like a few weeks ago, I got super into toffee. I was like, wait, I can make that at home, can I? That's just sugar and butter. That's all that's in toffee. And maybe a little vanilla and some salt. And so I started making toffee, and I was obsessed. And then as soon as I nailed the recipe, I was like, I'm done with this. I got it. So it has yet to lead me wrong. Because everything that's going in your fucking food, and you stop making it because you're like, that was a lot of sugar in that, wasn't it? But I feel like with meat, it's the same thing where it's like, it's not only knowing where that meat comes from, but it's like, I ground that. Like, I put that through a grinder, that hamburger right there. That's pretty cool, Or I that piece of backstrap is, that's from that deer. That's really awesome.
Well, and that's the thing is whenever I pull a pack of meat out of the freezer and it's from that deer or it's grouse, that takes me right back to those great memories that I had around that animal. Like that turkey. I'll never be able to look. That turkey went to the taxidermist, and it's like I'll never be able to look at that turkey and not recall that beautiful morning, watching him strut for those hens, his raspy gobble, which was the funniest thing in the world, and I have that. It's just a different experience. And going back to talking about being sufficient or self-reliant.
Yeah.
So again, during COVID, a lot of my friends were like, no, I had some friends that turned away the game meat because they weren't comfortable with the idea that it didn't come from a processor, which I'm like, if you've ever been in a slaughterhouse, you would maybe go completely vegan.
Right.
But I've slowly turned maybe the biggest anti-wild game hunter in my friend circle into, we had venison tacos at their house a few weeks ago. I'm taking one of their sons to his hunter's ed course in July. Again, me talking about not recruiting hunters, and here I am. I'm like, well, if you're going to do it, I want you to do it right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing. I don't want him to learn by getting on Instagram and seeing those posts and thinking that's how he should act in the field. I'd rather guide him through that experience because he is so young and impressionable. But even when we cooked those venison tacos and everybody loved it, she told me, don't tell my husband what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And after the fact, we did tell him, and there was this moment of like, is he going to go throw all this up?
Yeah.
Or is he going to say, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought?
Yeah. Oh, so weird. So weird. I don't know. I wanna fully go with like some of the things we've said here today, and just like I think we've established some really interesting premises that if we stretched them out would become.
Have we gotten any answers? I feel like we haven't gotten any answers.
The one thing is sort of like maybe. Well, it's actually funny. It's like what you said when we sat down and started having cigars. You were like I think you said like our grandfathers did it, right? So there's you have a certain longing for a tradition that seems to be gone, and I think you don't love the internet, and that the internet has brought up hunters doing things that you don't dig, because it can help boost their popularity. And I think that frankly that's true probably in every sport or hobby or anything at all. But where was I going with this thought? I get distracted by all the bird calls out here.
My Oriole is right behind you.
Yeah. Oh, very beautiful.
Yeah. They're only here for a few weeks, and
I really hope that's on my camera. It might be.
yeah, he's beautiful. Yeah.
But then also, you are a big fan of some of the technology that has emerged through hunting, like rifles and like really good scopes, probably, and great binoculars. And so,
And I myself post my trophy pictures
mhm,
on Instagram. I do.
yeah,
For me, the reason I do that is I always say, I'll never be sponsored because I don't want to muzzle and I don't want to play it by somebody else's rules and have to say what they want to say. But for me, not having a large immediate group of people that I can share that experience with, and because I do hunt by myself and I long for that sharing, going back to camp at the end of the day, having people stay at your house and everybody's tired, but you're sharing your experiences and stories as a kid was one of the most striking memories I had. That was the best time of the year.
yeah.
Screw Christmas, like hunt camp when all of Dad's friends came in and were spending the night and talking about their experience. That was the best time of year. And that's what I long for. And that's why I post online.
Yeah. People like real things, and I don't think real things are done. The question is if they'll keep going, and hunting is one of those real things, but so is being able to actually connect with people and talk with people. I've had to use a digital excuse, a podcast, to do what I wanted to do, which was to sit down and have conversations with people. But if I message someone, can I come sit on your porch and smoke your cigars and drink your bourbon and we'll talk for an hour and a half, people would say no. So I leverage the fact that this exists in order to do the thing I wanted to do. But I think we've just got to all be a little strategic with it and maybe trying to understand it a little better, because this is a gnarly place. It's a dangerous place. And the account getting sponsorship, the podcast getting sponsorship changes what I'm here to do. And that's a tricky thing. Then again, all of these hunters, I can't tell them not to do what they want to do. I know hunters and fishers that are amazing and are sponsored, and what I love about that is that I know they were working a shit job before all day long, and now they're going out and fishing all day, which is the thing they really should be doing. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there
how
are
do we draw the
people who
line?
have really worked their butt off pre-social media to get themselves into that position. You know, April Vokey, when she came onto the scene and fly fishing, she got a lot of grief. You know, she was this pretty young girl. Why was she out here? A lot of people probably questioned her the way I question some of the new hunters that I see popping up. And it's like, but she was doing it for the right reason. She's legit, you know, and she and I actually, I gave her a few quotes for a piece she did on the term huntress. And that was an interesting 6 months of hate messages and all of that. But it's like, you know, she had to go through that herself, and she really is legit. So,
Well, people won't make it through to this length of podcast. So can you tell me, because I missed the huntress thing? Like, what's the overarching thing? You said something that people didn't love.
yeah, so,
You
you
do
know,
or don't like the
just,
term?
just look at hashtag huntress
Mhm.
on Instagram, and you'll see a lot of women in a little bit of clothes.
Thirst trapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't hate on a woman for wanting to feel sexy. I want to feel sexy. Most of the time I'm in a hoodie and a pair of yoga pants, and that's not sexy at all. But there are moments where I want to embrace my feminine energy, and that's fine. Britt Longoria does a fantastic job of embracing being feminine and everything that means, but yet still being tasteful and respectful in her hunting. Unfortunately, the term huntress has gotten attached to that type of woman who is a thirst trap, or she's hunting in Africa in a bikini, or at least taking her pictures that way because that's what gets a lot of views on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, she's not walking around in the brush of Africa in her bikini. You know, she's made a good living doing that. But I just can't get behind that. And a lot of times if I see that hashtag huntress, it makes me discredit that person immediately. And I know that's not fair.
No, it's not, because you're a nuanced person. That's not exactly nuanced, because there's a good chance when Andrea goes out for her first hunts, that hashtag will be on the list.
Yeah.
She likes the word.
And that's the thing. So I read an amazing book that Britt Longoria suggested to me. It's Women Who Run with Wolves. You should absolutely read it. Get it on Amazon. It's like $6. And it talks about the origin of the word huntress. And it makes you want to embrace that. And that's what's so frustrating, is that that's been stripped away and tarnished in such a way that now I do have that reaction to that word. I have friends that are like, that have called me that word. And I know that they mean it from an endearing place, but it just because of what that social tie-in is now, it just makes me cringe.
Well, I get what you're saying. At the same time, if you hadn't told me that and I was going home and, writing up the description for this episode, I don't know if I would have written, that you were a hunter or a huntress. I don't know which one I would have written in the
I always
description
say
of the show.
that I am a hunter because what I do is hunt. And the fact that I am a woman is always secondary in my mind. A perfect example is whenever I went to Africa, I was the first solo female hunter they'd ever booked in that camp. And I found out later, they actually, the owner almost turned away my deposit because he wasn't sure how to handle having a woman by herself in camp, and he wasn't sure what that would be like for his PHs. And luckily, he said, he's like, you've totally changed my mind about women in the field by themselves. But yeah, I kind of went off on that tangent there. I'm sorry, but
But it's second.
Yeah, it is. It's
second.
always second. Whenever I'm in camp, I just want to be treated like one of the guys. I was the only person who was smoking cigars in camp. I brought a whole bunch of cigars thinking, well, I'm going to be in this camp with a group of guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some buddies to finally smoke with.
Yeah.
And all of them were like, oh, no, I'm not. I won't have any part of that.
Yeah, I know. I was stoked. I was like, we're going to bro down. That's really fun.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how much I can really say on this because you know what? I am a dude. I think, you know what? Let me try to guess what Andrea would say. That's a more fun game, and it really protects me.
Does it? It doesn't protect you from me.
Yeah, well, no, it's good because I think Andrea's viewpoint would generally be, I think you believe that people are putting a random piece of identity before any objective thing that they actually do. Would that be an accurate way to express your words even though you don't have a microphone today? All right, she likes that. And so it makes sense to say hunter first, female second. So then do we need the word huntress? Is there a reason for that word to exist? At the same time,
Getting rid of gender isn't great.
Andrew doesn't
That's
like the
true.
idea of getting rid of that because
I'm
there's
with
been an
you
extra
there.
hurdle.
Yeah. Again, embracing that feminine energy. And a perfect example is whenever I killed my first animal, my thought was, don't be that girl that cries. And then my PH, he looked at me and he goes, you need to just let yourself enjoy this moment. He could see that like it was a very emotional, full circle moment for me. And he's like, don't be afraid of that. And then that fear just completely escaped from my mind. And I didn't cry over every animal and I didn't sob over the first one. But, there was that moment. There were tears, the tears of joy. And yeah, you're right. Like, I shouldn't be ashamed of being a woman. And I'm certainly not. No offense, but I'd rather be a woman than a man any day. I love it. But, yeah.
Well, no offense taken because I'd also rather be a man. It's pretty great. Having lived with a lot of women, it's so much better being a man. My God, it's the best.
It's better when you have to.
Not because of the reasons people think. Not because I walk around being an asshole all day. Like, no, it's simple. I could boil it down to some very simple things that are way easier for me as a dude all the time.
Peeing off the side of a duck boat.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does suck.
Yeah, when it's super cold and you got to roll those waders down, and then you got to ask someone to hold your hand as you sit over the side of the boat.
Well, you want one that is real, but doesn't have to be. Isn't driven by an objective fact. All of the things that dudes get to do, all the hobbies dudes get to do, are way cooler. Like, it's just way cooler. I can find jujitsu anywhere, wrestling, fighting, whatever. It's awesome. Fishing, hunting, these are part of that too, and dudes are doing those everywhere.
As a woman, it's challenging when all of your friends are men, and this, all the guys that I train dogs with are, again, guys. The people I hunt with are men. They always have been. I don't have a single female friend in real life. I have plenty on social media, but I don't have any in real life that I hunt with. I've never hunted with another woman. And so the problem there is when they all go to hunt camp or they book these trips, well, I can't be invited because maybe their wives wouldn't be comfortable with a woman in camp. How does that look if we invite a woman? And so that's really been a challenge to be in this realm and not have a core sisterhood that hunts.
Yeah.
All my guy friends, they get invited on hunts left and right. You would think that a chick who hunts might get invited too, but it's not like that.
So I think your main point is that when it comes to women hunters, we should recruit and reacquire, and the other R that I'm forgetting, right? Or maybe not.
The good ones.
The good ones.
The good ones.
Yeah.
And there are great women. I'm going to say right now, Heather up in Michigan, who runs her English setters, and we joke back and forth that, I'm a breed snob, and she's an amazing biologist and a woman up there really putting the miles in behind her bird dogs. There's Britt Longoria, who's a legend. There's April Vokey, a legend in her own right on the angling side. I mean, there are women out there doing it right. They're just not getting all the likes and the follows.
Yeah, makes sense. I know I keep giving you a hard time about that but I think that if I had to title this episode, which luckily I don't, I title the episodes just by my guest's name. I'd title it like, "Wow, we found a lot of contradictions," because there are contradictions in all of these things that you think, that I think, that hunters think, that non-hunters think. It's full of contradictions, and I like a format where I get to sit down and try to talk them out and work them out and understand better all of these things. You helped me understand a lot of these things today. I've got a lot to think about.
It's being human.
Yeah.
And being human is messy.
Yeah.
Whether that's our hobbies or our personal relationships or just our internal relationships.
But what you said has struck me, the idea of only the good ones, because I think that is probably how you feel about this. Only the good ones should really be doing this, right? But then obviously the first thing is, how do we sort out the good ones from the bad ones, and whose job is it to decide who's the good ones and the bad ones? And how do we know that a bad one can't become a good one after bad experiences? A lot of bad people do bad shit for long periods of time, then they're like, oh fuck, and then they switch all around, they become the better ones. And then even moving beyond that, like, what do we do? It's not just a hunting problem. Only the bad ones apply, or only the good ones applies to like everything. Everywhere wants only the good ones at the things they do. So what do we do with the bad ones?
Yeah.
We definitely.
How do we weed those out?
Well.
How do we band together?
Well, I have thoughts on this that would get me in a lot of trouble, but generally I think that like we search for the lowest common denominator, and we often punish talent and take extra measures for lack of talent, as opposed to the other way around. I think the idea that people have that we're all going to push to become on the same level in one way or another with whatever we're talking about is a real issue. I don't know. You could go to a lot of things that I can't talk about on this podcast. A lot of things people get really mad about. The idea that it's about the opportunity instead of the outcome. I don't know. But there are a lot of just shitty people out there, and some of them are shitty about everything, and some of them are shitty about the thing that they do, which blows my mind because I think they should just do something else. They might might actually be good at.
That's how I feel about, there are certain people with huge followings and they got into the hunting realm after doing something else really well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just do that.
Just do that.
Go back to doing that.
You were great.
Great at that, not great at this.
Yeah. But I'm also kind of explicitly for the freedom of the individual, and dang, people can do what they want to do. But it is a responsibility for someone like yourself who knows about this to say, to try to be a voice in here's what good looks like and here's what bad looks like.
Yeah.
Because you're experienced. And I've met so many amazing hunters through this podcast that they're expressing their ideas about this is what good is here and this is what bad is here. Those are the people that should be listened to. They actually
And I'm
know.
not perfect. Let me just say that. I'm not perfect. There were times where I was probably taking smaller deer than I would take today. There are moments where like I said, I lust over that trophy and I hate other people because they get it. And I'm not perfect. As vain as I am, I'm not perfect. So just stop the hate mail before you message me now. I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think I'm the smartest. I don't think I have all the answers. I just want to find a better solution.
Yeah.
Because if we don't find a good solution to win over the anti-hunting movement, we're going to lose this.
Yeah, it's going to win. It's going to win. And it's going to win in all the weirdest ways. It's going to win by packaging meat as this looks and everything and is like meat but is not meat. Isn't that great? Andrea gets frustrated about fake meat in the beef section because that's super weird.
Yeah.
Why is it in the beef section? It's not beef.
Well, it's also going to have terrible consequences. If you're not putting a value on animals in Africa, do you know what's going to happen? The natives are going to kill all of them. Because it's competing with very precious grazing land for their beef.
Yeah.
If we look at what's happening in, I think it's in New Zealand right now. They're helicopter killing red stag because of COVID. People couldn't go over there and hunt them, and now they're just killing them by the masses and leaving them to rot in a field.
Yeah.
To me, that breaks my heart. If we don't have predator control, we are going to lose our ungulate populations across much of North America. That breaks my heart. It's very complicated, but hunting has its place. And some of the most reflective and insightful people I've ever known are the ones behind the guns. We're not here to be bloodthirsty. We love these animals. We care about these animals. We've devoted our life to learning about these animals. And that's what has to come out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to find the positive note, though. I mean, it's been very serious, and sometimes serious can feel kind of down. I think we've covered like some really interesting territory and a lot for me to think about, and a lot for me to carry into future episodes. And I really hope that you come back on the show at some point. And you'll be a reason we come back out to Indianapolis sometime, because I want the follow up on all these like thoughts.
Absolutely.
But I wonder if you see some positive things happening in your experience too in this realm of hunting. Is it all
absolutely.
doom and gloom?
No. I mean, look at how women have embraced hunting. We're the largest growing market in firearms in general, but then also in hunting. Look at how women aren't just letting their husbands go out into the field. Look at women who are going out without men. I mean, look at the women in obscure game. I mean, I hunt grouse. A few years ago, I don't think half of the people who hunt grouse now maybe even knew what that bird was. And so that's where it's really great. I love seeing how women have embraced it and how it's no longer a freakish thing to see a woman in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll be honest, even as quickly as 8 coming on 9 years ago, the first time I went to a draw hunt in Indiana to go waterfowl hunt, I was the only woman in that office, and I heard some pretty crude comments. I don't feel that I would have that experience today, and that's a decade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we've really come far, and that's really great. Look at, all of these brands that are finally realizing you can't shrink it and pink it, and that's the solution for female hunting gear and guns. Look at what
Shrinking
Siren
thing, I
has
really like
done for the shotgun market for women. My first experience with shotguns was me, maybe all of like 80 pounds, holding my dad's 870, and he tells me, point it at this, you see that? Yeah. Pull the trigger, and if you ever drop that gun, you never get to hold another one. And from shooting an ill-fitted 870 to having a gun that's custom made for me, I mean, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
To see that growth. That's what makes me happy.
Yeah.
Also, I like not wearing shitty gear when I'm deer hunting.
Yeah. You like that the quality of these things has actually improved over the like that seems more important to you, that the entire experience can be improved as opposed to the numbers fight.
Yeah.
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 But a lot of people just make it about the numbers fight. That's all it is. The numbers between conservation and population and how many hunters do we have and all those things. And that's like a lot of the conversation that I end up having. But it's really interesting to hear someone point out like a lot of the positives come down to like how much of a better experience is this now.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I've froze my ass off in plenty of tree stand.
Yeah.
I've worn men's gear that I'm like pinning short my pants so that I can walk in them.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that anymore. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a real pain in the ass still, but I'm sure better than back in the day trying to find like Andrea's gear.
Yeah.
And half the time I'll go, like what we still haven't found you is a camo ball cap that is like for a smaller head that looks decent.
That doesn't look huge. I'm
Yeah.
trying to tell everybody that like not every woman looks good in a high profile 6-panel hat, and that's such the rage now. I want a fitted dad cap, ball cap with no structure. I mean, my forehead is big enough as it is. That'll be the new thing people will pick on me for. But I admit, my forehead is large. I don't need to draw more attention to the top half of my head.
I know we've been trying like hell to find you just a camo hat. That's all.
I buy kids' hats.
She can't even find kids' hats.
Maybe not looking in the right spot.
KU has some women's and kids' hats. Yeah.
All right. My batteries are going to die on this recorder like any second. I'm trying to decide if I want to, wrap it there just because of that, or if that's a bad idea. We've done a solid episode at this point.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Let's end it on a high point.
Yeah.
We'll revisit it.
I like that. Let's put a bookmark in. Please, let's do this again.
Absolutely.
Thank
You guys are welcome back anytime. I've got
you.
40-something bottles of bourbon we can try.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And we are in the great state of Indiana, and I'm fine blowing the secret. I wasn't going to before, but of course we're going to go see Ty the Bourbon Guy once again, my cousin, on the podcast. So, folks, if you enjoyed that one, we'll be doing some serious bourbon talk on a episode soon to be released.
I need that invite.
Yeah, you probably come out. We are family after all. All right, so tell people where they can find you if you would like to on the internet, if you would.
Instagram at tdcompton1 with the number 1. It's Tiffany Dawn. You can also find me on Facebook, and that's about it. I don't do a lot else.
Nice. Andrew, would you take a few photos while I'm wrapping up here? Sorry, I usually get that more on time. People, we've got good episodes coming. It was really fun to do a hunting episode. Thank you for being a part of that.
Hey, thanks for, asking me out of the blue.
It was great. I honestly, and it was so funny to find just a cigar and whiskey picture, and I was like, I knew it was just going to be, I look at a lot of Instagram to try to find people. I was like, this is going to be one of those like bearded villains dudes. I don't even know what bearded villains is. Someone tell me at some point that like just posts that they have a cigar every day. Great. But I clicked it anyway, and I'm really glad I did because it opened up this profile that I was like, this is a person I've got to meet. I can't believe we're staying so weirdly near you. It's awesome.
I even asked, why are you here? You're here?
Well, because, there's not a lot of RV parks in downtown, of various cities, so it is what it is. We have more in Indiana to come. Andrea and I are planning out our summer and fall travel schedules. I don't do this a lot on the podcast, but if you guys have people that you think would be like amazing to have on the podcast, best to DM me soon so that we could actually maybe make that happen, because we're going to be kind of all over the U.S. in a little while. So if you all know people, hit me up. Otherwise, I will just keep serving up the most amazing strangers that I find all over the country, and probably a hell of a lot of jiu-jitsu too. So it's up to you, listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Did I miss anything, Andrea? All right. We will see you on the next episode.